America in the 1850s was a nation on edge. The country was growing rapidly, with new territories being added and the population expanding westward. However, this growth brought with it significant challenges and deep-seated conflicts. The issue of slavery cast a long shadow over the land. It was a contentious topic that divided families, communities, and the entire nation. The Southern economy relied heavily on slave labor, while many in the North viewed the institution as morally reprehensible. Two major parties dominated the political scene, the Democrats and the Whigs. These parties were the primary vehicles for political expression and debate, each with its own set of ideologies and supporters. The Democrats, largely supported by Southern slaveholders, fought to maintain the institution of slavery. They believed that slavery was essential to their way of life and economic prosperity, and they were determined to protect it at all costs. The Whigs, a more diverse group, struggled to find common ground on this divisive issue. Their party included both pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions, making it difficult to present a unified stance on the matter. The Compromise of 1850, a series of laws designed to quell tensions over slavery, proved to be a temporary truce. It included measures such as the admission of California as a free state, and the establishment of territorial governments in the rest of the lands acquired from Mexico. Instead of easing the nation's anxieties, it further inflamed passions on both sides of the slavery debate. The measures were seen as either too lenient or too harsh, depending on one's perspective, leading to increased polarization. The Fugitive Slave Act, a particularly contentious part of the compromise, forced Northerners to participate in the capture and return of runaway slaves. This law mandated that escaped slaves be returned to their owners, even if they were found in free states. This ignited outrage in the North and fueled the abolitionist movement. Many Northerners were appalled by the idea of being legally compelled to support the institution of slavery, leading to widespread protests and acts of civil disobedience. The Whig Party, caught in the crossfire of this bitter debate, began to fracture. The internal divisions over slavery weakened the party's ability to function effectively and present a coherent platform. Its northern and southern wings found it increasingly difficult to reconcile their opposing views on slavery. The party's inability to address the issue in a way that satisfied both factions led to a loss of support and influence. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed for the potential expansion of slavery into new territories, proved to be the final straw. This act effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise, which had previously restricted the spread of slavery. The Whig Party, deeply divided and unable to offer a united front, crumbled. The party's collapse left a void in the political landscape, creating an opportunity for new political movements to emerge. Into this political vacuum stepped a new generation of leaders, determined to forge a different path. These leaders were driven by a sense of moral urgency and a desire to address the nation's most pressing issues. They believed that slavery was a moral evil that must be stopped. Their conviction was rooted in the principles of liberty and equality, and they were committed to fighting for a future where these ideals were upheld. They envisioned a nation where all men were truly created equal, regardless of the color of their skin. This vision was inspired by the founding principles of the United States and the belief that every individual deserved the right to freedom and dignity. These men, united by their conviction and their outrage, would soon give birth to a new political force, the Republican Party. This party would go on to play a crucial role in shaping the future of the nation and addressing the issue of slavery head-on. The issue of slavery wasn't just about politics, it was about morality. It was a deeply divisive issue that cut to the core of American values and beliefs. Many Northerners saw the institution as a stain on the nation's soul. They believed that a country founded on the principles of freedom and equality could not, in good conscience, allow the practice of human bondage to continue. They read with horror the accounts of enslaved people suffering under the lash. These stories were not just tales of physical pain, but of broken families, stolen lives, and the crushing of human spirits. They listened with rapt attention to the powerful speeches of former slaves like Frederick Douglass. His eloquence and first-hand accounts of the brutal realities of slavery moved many to join the abolitionist cause. The South, however, saw slavery as an economic necessity. For them, it was the backbone of their agricultural economy, which was heavily reliant on the labor-intensive cultivation of crops like cotton and tobacco. Their agricultural economy depended on enslaved labor. Without it, they feared their entire way of life would collapse, leading to economic ruin and social upheaval. They argued that the Constitution protected their right to own property, including enslaved people. This legal argument was used to justify the continuation of slavery and to resist any attempts at abolition. They feared that the abolition of slavery would destroy their way of life. The Southern states believed that their social and economic systems were inextricably linked to the institution of slavery. The Compromise of 1850, far from resolving these differences, only seemed to highlight them. It was a temporary solution that failed to address the underlying moral and economic conflicts. The Fugitive Slave Act in particular sparked outrage and resistance in the North. This law required citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves, which many Northerners found abhorrent. Citizens formed vigilance committees to protect runaway slaves from slave catchers. These groups worked tirelessly to ensure that escaped slaves could find safety and freedom. Some even helped slaves escape to freedom in Canada via the Underground Railroad. This secret network of safe houses and routes was a lifeline for many seeking to escape the horrors of slavery. The publication of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852 further inflamed passions. The novel brought the brutal realities of slavery into the homes of countless Americans. Stowe's powerful novel, which depicted the horrors of slavery in vivid detail, became a national sensation. It was not just a book, but a call to action that resonated deeply with its readers. It sold millions of copies and was adapted into popular plays. These adaptations brought the story to even wider audiences, further spreading its anti-slavery message. The book helped to galvanize anti-slavery sentiment in the North and around the world. It became a rallying cry for those who believed that slavery must be abolished. As the nation lurched from crisis to crisis, it became increasingly clear that a new political force was needed. The existing political parties seemed unable to address the growing divide over slavery, one that could speak to the moral outrage of the North and offer a clear alternative to the pro-slavery stance of the Democratic Party. This new force needed to be strong enough to challenge the status quo and bring about real change. This new force would soon find its voice in the Republican Party. Founded in the 1850s, the Republican Party quickly became the political home for those who opposed the expansion of slavery and sought to promote freedom and equality for all. Across the North, a chorus of voices began to rise in opposition to slavery. Abolitionists, long dismissed as radicals, found new audiences for their message. Frederick Douglass, a former slave who had escaped to freedom, became a powerful voice for abolition. His eloquent speeches and writings exposed the brutality of slavery and challenged the conscience of the nation. Newspapers like William Lloyd Garrison's The Liberator and Frederick Douglass's North Star gave voice to the abolitionist cause. These publications denounced slavery as a moral abomination and called for its immediate end. They published first-hand accounts of slavery, argued for the rights of African Americans, and challenged the racist assumptions of the day. In response to the Fugitive Slave Act, ordinary citizens took extraordinary measures to resist its enforcement. They formed vigilance committees to protect runaway slaves from slave catchers. They provided food, shelter, and safe passage to those fleeing north to freedom. The Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses, helped thousands of slaves escape to freedom in Canada. These acts of resistance, both large and small, demonstrated the growing strength of the anti-slavery movement. They also highlighted the need for a political party that could channel this energy into a powerful force for change. The time was ripe for a new political movement to emerge, one that could unite the disparate strands of anti-slavery sentiment into a cohesive force. The Republican Party emerged from a series of meetings and conventions held throughout the North in the early 1850s. These gatherings were not just political events but were also social and cultural milestones that reflected the growing unrest and desire for change among the Northern populace. These gatherings brought together a diverse group of people united by their opposition to the expansion of slavery. This coalition included individuals from various walks of life, each bringing their unique perspectives and experiences to the table. Abolitionists, former Whigs, anti-slavery Democrats, and Free Soilers found common cause in their shared belief that slavery was a moral evil that must be stopped. Their unity was a testament to the power of a common goal, transcending previous political affiliations and personal differences. One of the key events in the formation of the Republican Party was the reaction to the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. This act, which effectively nullified the Missouri Compromise, allowed for the potential expansion of slavery into new territories, igniting a firestorm of controversy and protest. This act, which allowed for the potential expansion of slavery into new territories, was seen by many Northerners as a betrayal of the principles of freedom and equality. The outrage was palpable, and it galvanized many who had previously been indifferent to the cause of abolition. In response to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, outraged citizens across the North organized meetings and protests. These gatherings were not just spontaneous outbursts, but were carefully planned and coordinated efforts to resist the spread of slavery. One such meeting, held in Ripon, Wisconsin, in February 1854, is often cited as the birthplace of the Republican Party. This small-town meeting was a pivotal moment where the seeds of a new political movement were sown. At this meeting, a group of anti-slavery Whigs and Democrats resolved to form a new party dedicated to opposing the expansion of slavery. Their resolve was strengthened by the belief that a united front was necessary to combat the pro-slavery forces. Over the next few months, similar meetings were held throughout the North, leading to the formation of state Republican parties. These state parties were the building blocks of the national movement, each contributing to the growing momentum. These parties shared a common platform of opposing the expansion of slavery, promoting economic modernization, and upholding the rights of all Americans. Their vision extended beyond just the abolition of slavery. They sought to create a more just and equitable society. In February 1856, representatives from these state parties met in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for the first National Republican Convention. This convention was a landmark event, bringing together delegates from across the North to formalize their shared goals and strategies. The convention nominated John Fremont for president and adopted a platform that called for the restriction of slavery in the territories and the admission of Kansas as a free state. Fremont's candidacy symbolized the party's commitment to these principles and their readiness to challenge the status quo. Though Fremont lost the 1856 election to Democrat James Buchanan, the Republican Party had established itself as a major force in American politics. This election was a turning point, demonstrating the party's potential to reshape the political landscape and influence the future direction of the nation.